This is the 2015 Kalkhoff Agattu Impulse 8, and it's actually the best-selling model in Europe. I think it's a great combination of like price point, which is $35.99, and ergonomics and just sort of comfort. And this brings all of the same really premium like drive systems that the other Kalkhoff bikes do. It's an excellent bike for getting around the city and doing more advanced commuting or even touring. If you want to, because the range is just phenomenal. I mean, the battery on this thing is like 36 volt, 17 amp hours. That's easily 100 miles, dependent on how much weight you've got and the terrain and stuff, but like legitimate 100 plus mile bike. I think that it's even up to like 150 or something. And I actually was talking to one of the people at Kalkhoff about this bike, and someone in Europe had one of the older versions, and it had gone like 40,000 miles and it's still hanging in there. So that's a real testament to like the German engineering and the price point. It's not cheap, but you're getting almost like a bike car with this thing. And you can see there's little extras like this cafe lock, and what this does is it like, here, I got the key, kind of put the key, by the way, the same key as you use for the battery. I think we put the key in over here, and then you can slide this little knob. There we go. You can see that like metal piece right there, and that basically just locks the rear wheel unless someone wants to like break all your spokes, which then the bike would be useless. So that's kind of a cool little feature, and they call it a cafe lock because it's like, oh, if you're at the cafe and you just need to dash in for a spot of tea, you can cafe lock it, for a few minutes. I would still recommend maybe putting like a chain around it, but that's what it's for. And then also, of course, there's a little pump. So check this out. If you're out there and you've got these interesting sort of like Schrader to Presta valves, you've got a pump here that can just pop right off and fill them back up. And that could be useful for making your way back home if you're out for one of those like 100-mile treks. So that's really cool. And of course, the rack also is a premium rack. It's using standard gauge tubing, so it's going to work with your panniers that clip on, which is cool. It's got a little spring latch for just small articles, and then it's got this really great blocker, and that's designed to keep the panniers from hitting your tires, hitting your spokes and stuff. Just really, really good build, and it connects to the fender, which is kind of like a plastic composite, and I think that keeps it stiff, and it probably keeps it from rattling, and the fender extends all the way. It's going to block the battery from getting wet and stuff. It's just a really cool, really well thought out design, and that extends to the kickstand down here, which is adjustable length. It extends to the lighting system, and I guess the reflector system. You can see there's reflectors. This is also a light, and it's powered by this dynamo up front. It's like let's see if we can spin this. Yeah, Shimano dynamo hub. Basically, it powers the lights as you're riding. As soon as you start riding, the red light in the rear comes on, and the headlight will come on and kind of like flash for safety. And that will work even if the battery is not running. And so that's a great safety feature, again, for if you're way, way out and you don't want to get hit by a car. And this thing, it can be angled sort of up or down, and it's connected directly to the fork. Versus some cheaper bikes connect to the fender, and then it rattles all around. That is not the case. You're just premium all the way around on this. There's even like a standing light setup. So there's a capacitor, and a little bit of energy is stored from the dynamo, and it's going to keep this light running when you've stopped the bike for a little while, maybe a minute or two, just to help people around you notice you if you're parking. So I've kind of hit a lot of like the little extras, and maybe I'll just keep doing that. Basic SR Centaur fork, no adjustments, but it's going to cushion your ride a little bit, save your wrists. That's going to be further enhanced by these nice soft ergonomic grips. They don't have lockers, so if you really twist them, they could twist a little bit, but not a big deal. Saddle, super comfort, extra large, like kind of a gel saddle. Still fairly active design, but you've got just a lot more comfort here. And then this nice glide, postmodern seat post suspension. Okay, so like that's cush. Like this whole thing is gonna feel good, even though it has rather efficient tires. Okay, so we can see these are 700 by 38C Schwabe Marathons. They've got this nice reflective sidewall, another safety feature, but they're not super fat. They're a little bit narrower. They kind of got a hybrid tread on them. They're going to be efficient for riding, but they might be a little more jarring, and some of that jar is taken out by the shock the grips, the seat post, the saddle, all that. So really good balance. And whether you're a young person or an old person, I think this bike would feel good, especially over those long distances. And depending on your body type, in America, this is going to come in 3 different styles. Well, 2 different styles: diamond frame, so like the traditional like high step, or this wave sort of low step, which is, you know, a lot easier to approach and stand over at like stoplights and stuff and just be more comfortable. So there's 3 sizes of each: 3 high step, 3 low step. So you can really dial it in, get a bike that fits you, that you could keep forever, you know, and really enjoy. I like the little bell. And then there's an adjustable like a stem right here, so you can angle that up and really dial it in. We got the swept back handlebars, so you know, again, like the kind of that upright riding position, even though this is a more active, capable bike. I think this might be a good time to mention like the human powered drive system. Got an 8-speed Shimano Nexus internally geared hub in the rear. Really easy to shift with this, you know, half grip twist shifter. That could, you know, sometimes on the more advanced bikes, I say it can kind of compromise your grip, because if you're like, you know, really bearing down on the grips, that could happen. But on a bike like this, I actually think it works really well. It's well integrated, it feels good, it matches the grips. And then back here, that's the hub right there, Shimano Nexus. And so all the gears are like inside of this. They're protected from the elements. They might not wear as quickly. And it's also going to allow you to have a shorter chain that's really stiff, right? There's no external derailleur, and so that's going to help this thing last longer and be more durable. It does add a little bit more weight, and that's one of the big differences between this, you know, Kalkhoff Impulse 8 versus like the Sahel, which is like their higher end, like more advanced looking bike. Here's the Sahel over here. It's got like the integrated suspension, and it's a little bit lighter weight. This is still, you know, you're actually getting more range with this, because it's a 36 volt 17 amp hour battery versus 36 like 11.6 12 on that other one. But they both use the Impulse 2.0 system. It's 250 watt geared center drive, and in my experience, it's been very capable. I've taken it off road, I've taken it up this big hill that we're going to check out later, and it feels solid. It's relatively quiet, it's really responsive. It's sensing things like your wheel speed with this little magnet and the sensor right there. It's also sensing your pedal cadence, okay? So the fact that you're turning these cranks, it's sensing that. And then how hard you're pushing. It's got a torque sensor. And that, in my experience, you know, makes you work a little bit more because you're pushing down, but you do have a few modes of assist to choose from. So I'm gonna get to those in a minute. But I wanted to just point out this battery is removable. Let's see here, we've got this nice charging port that's really easy to access, whether it's on the bike or off. Little LED indicator for the current state of charge. And if you just twist the key, kind of tip this, kind of comes right off. There we go. There's where it mounts. Kind of look at this again. 36 volt, 603 watt hours total. I'm gonna go ahead and weigh this thing real quick. Set it down on my shoes so that we don't scrape it up at all. And I recommend, if you can, try to keep your battery between like 20 and 80%. Store it in a cool, dry place to really maximize its life. And this uses lithium-ion batteries. They're high quality, high energy density. And the pack weighs 6.2 pounds. So, you know, you can imagine taking this off if you need to transport the bike. You know, you're just gonna reduce the weight of the frame. So these are the chargers for the Kalkhoff electric bikes, and you can actually see they've got a nice charging stand, and one of the batteries is in there. This is the 36 volt 17 amp hour, actually kind of stuck in there right now. This is pretty neat because, you know, you can imagine if you've got your room and you might have like a bunch of wires running around with chargers like that. You can actually plug the end of this regular wall charger into the back of this, you know, platform charger, and then you've got just like a really neat kind of almost like a display of your battery like that. So I like that. And I weighed this base is 2.3 pounds, and then this traditional charger weighs 1.5 pounds, and it's got like a nice long extension cord there, and then this piece, and it's relatively quiet. It looks like it vents pretty well. Let's see, input 100 to 240 volts, output 42 volts, 3 amps, so pretty cool. And it it doesn't have quick release on the front wheel, just uses kind of regular bolts. So keep that in mind if you're going to need to move this around. You just bring along some extra tools. Just put it right there, tip it on, and we're locked and loaded. Oh, almost. There we go, now we're locked. And now I'm going to try to weigh the bike. Again, it's a little bit heavier because of that suspension fork and everything. 58.2. So it's about, 58 pounds. Again, the larger battery capacity, the suspension fork, it adds to the weight, but it's kind of in the range, especially for a 100-mile capable bike with fenders, with a rack and everything. That's not too bad. Kind of keep that in mind. So now that the battery is mounted to the frame right there, we just come up here and press this little power button. Boop. And now we can see the display. And I'm actually going to turn this around. It's fine. Boop. Getting ready to go off-road. So one of the things you might notice is that, that depending on how this display is angled, you could get some glare, some really bright glare like that. So what you can do is angle it. The display isn't removable, however, so keep that in mind just when you're parking it. And I don't know, maybe if it's out in the rain, you might want to cover it or something. I think it's designed to be pretty water resistant though. We got your speed right here, battery capacity, and there's a bunch of increments there. So it's just like a finer tuned display. You can get a better idea of just how much battery you're using. It's not just like 3 big LEDs, like 1, 2, 3. It looks like there's maybe like 7 or 8 bars. And then you've got your odometer and trip distance. And you can switch between the two by pressing this little set button over here. Boop, set. So now my trip distance is 1.4 miles. And if I want to clear that, I just hold the minus down for a second, well, maybe a few seconds. And boop, there we go. Trip distance is 0 now. I can, of course, arrow up and down to change the assist level. This is a pedal assist only bike. There's no throttle on the bike, and that's part of what helps you get that great range. But the best way to maximize range is to use a lower level of assist. So you kind of start out in whatever mode you left it on. I left it in 0, so we've got basically just a cycle computer right now, just telling me my battery level and my speed. If I want, I press plus, and we go up to Eco. That's the lowest level assist. Plus again, Sport, and plus again, Power. So there's those 3 levels of assist to choose from. I'm going to do my tests, my ride tests with Power mode, just to get, the most motor output. You can hear it a little bit better and see it climbing. I'm going to start with a little off-road riding action. Whoop! There we go. Kick that kickstand up. Stays out of the way pretty good, which is nice. Here we go. Oh, and I'm in like 8 gear, so it's a little bit harder to pedal right now. There we go. Suspension's feeling pretty nice. Seat post shock. It feels pretty good, even for a little bit of off-road riding right now. You can hear the motor. Relatively responsive. Go ahead and shift gears. There we go. Now we can hear it a little bit more because I'm in a lower gear, and so the motor's spinning faster, but it's getting a mechanical advantage. Oh, there we go. And I should call out that these brakes, they are hydraulic rim brakes. So this is Magura HS11, and a rim brake actually has better leverage than a disc brake, but for off-road a lot of bikes use disc brakes so that they avoid some of the muck and water that you might experience on the trail. So anyway, these are real easy to pull even with just one finger. A lot of stopping power, but they don't have motor inhibitors built in, okay? So the motor is very sensitive and sophisticated in that it has shift sensing. Even for this geared hub, when I shift gears, the motor cuts out temporarily so that there isn't a lot of extra forces going in on that. But the brake levers don't have motor inhibitors. So, I was doing a test earlier. If I hold the brake, but then I push on the pedal, I can actually fight the system. See how the motor's trying to go because it thinks it's torque sensor in addition to cadence and speed. but I'm telling it not to go up here, and so the system is like fighting itself. So keep that in mind. You know, if you're at a stoplight and you put your foot down like this to rest, you could find yourself like lurching forward accidentally, and you don't want an accident. Pretty responsive, you know, not perfect. It's not shutting off immediately, but it's doing a good enough job. And I was gonna climb this hill, even though this has a 250 watt motor, which doesn't sound like a lot, being, you know, that internally geared center drive, leveraging your cassette, it's great. You know, it gets you up this kind of terrain without much problem at all, without having to stand up. I'm gonna try to do it in gear 5. So that's relatively hard. 1 would be the easiest. So gear 5, I'm gonna stop halfway up and start and just let you see the motor. Yeah, so I'm already like halfway up. I'm gonna stop and then just start from scratch. No problem. Not a problem at all. I don't feel like I'm overexerting myself. It's good stuff. Oh. Whew. So that's Europe's most popular Kalkhoff bike, the Agattu Impulse 8 for 2015. It's a pretty sweet bike. There's a lot of good features, good quality stuff. For the full write-up on this with pictures and comments and stuff, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com.